Hello and welcome to the Conversation Cabinet. And today we have the representative for College Democrats of Georgia, Matthew Rakestraw. How are you doing today?
Good. It's early on my end, but so far everything's going fine.
Well, thanks for joining us so early in the morning. It's our first time having an American on, so we've actually had to coordinate this. You're awake,
Great.
obviously, yeah. I mean, America's so relevant at the moment, especially to us in the UK, so it's fantastic to have yourself on.
Well, it's good to be on, and it's nice being the first American. I'll wear that proudly.
I'll go down in the history books, I promise. So Matthew, could you just tell us a bit about what exactly you do and who exactly the Democrats are for some of our listeners who might not know who they are? They're not present here.
Well, I'm a student at Georgia Tech, and I am currently the president of the College Democrats of Georgia. And the Democratic Party, technically I lead the collegiate wing of the Democratic Party in Georgia, and that's part of the broader youth wing of the Democratic Party in this state. But we are the leading progressive and center-left political party in the United States, and we're fighting every day to make the lives of working people better. That's our main purpose.
Well, you talked about the being centre left and slightly left wing, but I think if you ask Americans that, sometimes they'll kind of struggle to find the identity within Democrats, as in they feel like they're either doing not enough or they're doing too much. It's never, they're never doing the right thing. How would you say at the moment that Democrats' identity is kind of being shaped? Do you think this is a time, especially with Republicans in power, do you think this is a time for Democrats to kind of unify behind one central position?
Well, we're a broad church, and we're in the process of reaching a form of unity. There are different wings of the party that are trying to pull us in certain directions. I mean, at the end of the day, we just need to be focused on what we're doing for people. Forget the labels you want to put on it. Forget the wings of the party that you want to align yourself with. We're just trying to do good things. I will say, the party, there always has been this ideological tension within the party, and that's natural. It's natural in the Labor Party. It's natural in the Liberal Democrats.
Yeah.
We on the left of center of the political spectrum often find it very difficult to unify. That's not unique to the Democratic Party. I guess that's the point I'm trying to make. But we do have a good amount of time to unify ahead of next year's elections for the 2026 midterms, and well ahead of the 2028 presidential elections, when we as Democrats are going to have a lot of very qualified, highly capable, and decently motivated individuals who are going to be running for president. I expect a lot of governors to run, specifically thinking of Governor Andy Beshear from Kentucky. He's brilliant. Governor Wes Moore of Maryland, and several other names that just really qualified and competent people.
So would you define the Democrats at the moment as quite a fractured party?
Well, I know in Georgia we're unified. We know what we're doing. We know what we're fighting for, because we have to be ready for next year.
But on the national stage?
On the national stage, the national party is still trying to sort itself out, to be frank. But I will make this point. In Georgia, we have the opportunity to serve as a model for the national party on how to properly manage these tensions that are obvious within the party, but do it in a way that doesn't shut people out, do it in a way that doesn't neglect certain voices. I mean, I think we do that quite well here, because we are such a diverse state, and because we are, we are center stage in this entire political debate, because the way Georgia goes, so goes the nation. And we have to be ready in 2026 when we have a Senate election, when we need to reelect our U.S. Senator John Ossoff. He's a Democrat who won in 2020, in a special election in 2021, technically. But he is up for reelection this year at the end of his first, and hopefully the first of many, of his 6-year term. So we have a lot of work to do. So we're already getting locked and loaded. I will say our Democratic leadership in this state, it's a group of highly qualified and I will say people who are ready to go into uncomfortable territory. There's a new focus within the party to not just solely rely on the votes of people in metro and suburban areas. Our party chair, Charlie Bailey, is very intentional about what he's doing, so that we can reach out to people in rural areas, like the place I grew up in.
Yeah. You seem very, very optimistic about the election next year. I'm just quite curious, because you talked about how trying to push towards people in more rural areas, but I feel like people in those areas are very conscious of the fact that Democrats almost seem the only slogan maybe is anti-Trump or not Trump. Do you think, or do you have a message already that you're going to use in the next election, so you feel more optimistic that maybe you've got a slogan or policy that people in rural areas will feel more accustomed to?
Well, I'm a natural optimist. Just to give you a bit of background about like where I come from and how I ended up here. I grew up on a farm in Southwest Georgia. My parents started off in law enforcement, so not exactly your typical democratic demographic. But I mean, I know everything that I do now, and I've been able to do everything that I've done because education was there for me. A strong public education was there for me, and it really didn't matter that I grew up in a small town on a farm. I knew everybody that that I lived next to. I mean, we're all neighbors. None of that was. It all mattered certainly, but none of it. I think is absent from other places, I will say. So there's inherently no divide between the people in urban areas and the people in rural areas. I mean, everyone's they all care about the same things in slightly different ways. So I don't think that we should neglect people in rural areas just because they have a voice too. And
Of course, yeah.
back when the party was quite different from how it is now, we were winning farmers and we were winning people in rural areas en masse. That's just not the case anymore. But we should reach out to people, not try and lecture them by any means, but reach out to people and try to understand what they care about, because we are a party that should be focused on the needs of working people. And if a rural hospital closes in Georgia, that's going to affect people, millions of people, whether they live in Georgia or not, because the cost of your healthcare is going to go up, and there are going to be more people who are sick, and that's one of the consequences that we're going to see from the big beautiful bill, so-called, that passed a few months ago. There are going to be hospitals that close in rural parts of America that people who voted for Donald Trump are going to feel the brunt of. And we need to make that case, because we can make an optimistic case, but if we don't have connection with the people there already, then it's going to fall on deaf ears. And we just have to be very focused and open, honest, and authentic with people.
Why do you think that Georgia is a swing state then? Because I believe the difference between people who identify as Democrat and Republican is only 1%. Yet the impact of Donald Trump's economic policy, the stock market crashing or going so low at the start of this year, and what you just said about hospitals, and these people are voting and endorsing things like the Big Beautiful Bill. Why is it that it's so split in Georgia when they can see the effects of it?
Well, you saw the trend back in 2016, I believe. Georgia was one of the states that trended in favor of Hillary Clinton, was one of the anomalies that trended in Hillary's favor. That trend continued. Our state is growing very fast. It's one of the best states in the nation to do business, to open a business. Doesn't benefit everybody, I will say, but Georgia is growing and growing fast. The people who are moving here, the people who are growing up here, want a different vision for the country and for the state. I mean, Georgia itself has been governed by Republicans for the past, I think, 2 decades at this point. I have not known, or I can't remember a time in my life when there was a Democrat leading the state government. It's been that long.
Wow.
And I think people are looking for something different, and we can provide them with something different. They just need to know what we stand for.
Could you give us some examples of some differences you'd give in comparison to the Republicans that you have in government at the moment?
Well, let me give you an example. This is a very Georgia-specific example, but we have, I believe, a $16 billion budget surplus. We're only required to have $4 billion in surplus by state law. So that's $12 billion that we could be using to expand healthcare access, pay our teachers more, raise the state minimum wage. There's a lot of stuff that we could do to benefit the lives of everyday people, but because of the current leaders in our state, we don't do those things. And we as Democrats can provide that optimistic message to reach out to people that wouldn't otherwise support us. They just need to know what we're going to do with that money, which is their money.
Yeah.
They just want to know what we're going to do with it. So I think we've got a lot of things that we can do to reach out to people, not only focus on, we don't like Trump. We think that the Republicans in Washington are wasting our time and wasting our money. We can't just focus on that. We have to be a true alternative, not just the anti-that party.
Yeah. Given the significant like disapproval of Trump's economic performance recently. Do you think there's something you could do specifically in Georgia to help the public trust swing more towards Democrats? You talk about the surplus, which is fantastic, but how can you kind of put that in digestible terms for people in your area so that they know that, you know, something's good's going to happen to them?
Well, I mean, I think I touched on this a little bit earlier, but it's going to start with connecting with people. And that's as basic as what people did over the last couple of days. Every year there's a state fair in Middle Georgia, the Perry Fair, and our state party put up a tent. I know it's simple, but they put up a tent. And Democrats so rarely show up to events, or
Really?
have in recent years not shown up to events like this. But this is a new shift. Is meeting people where they are, showing up in their towns and talking to them is, I mean, it sounds like not a radical or revolutionary approach, but it's different. And if we can show people that we're normal and that we care about them, I think that's the first step to then getting beyond that barrier to talk about the issues that we care about, like expanding healthcare access, like trying to blunt the worst effects of these tariffs that Donald Trump is levying across the nation and across the world. Because, I mean, the people who are going to get hurt the hardest by this are obviously the consumers, but who are the consumers getting their stuff from? Farmers.
Yeah, exactly.
Farmers are going to get battered by this because they are going to have to, well, some of them are going to have to try and find entirely different foreign markets for their products. Soybeans in the United States is less a Georgia problem, but soybeans in the middle of the country, they don't have a market to sell because of Donald Trump's trade war with China. Farmers there don't have a market to sell their soybeans. So there are things that we can do. A, lower the tariffs that don't need to be there in the first place. B, provide supports for farmers through public investment that they can use to help lower the high capital requirements that they have to grow and produce. So there are a lot of people that are going to be harmed by this administration that voted for the administration, to be frank. And we can't blame them for the way things are going because they voted for Donald Trump hoping that he would cut their costs, improve their lives. They didn't vote for him thinking that he was going to make their lives worse. And we don't need to lecture them or belittle people simply based on who they voted for in the past, because I very firmly believe that we should go after every vote and we shouldn't neglect anybody. Because I think most people are open to an effective government, an effective and efficient government, and they don't really care about what party is in power, because people care about improving the country first rather than voting for a party first.
Well, it sounds like there are a lot of policies that the Democrats have that are popular in principle, but just haven't been presented or been done justice when delivered. Would you say that's the reason for that is Kamala Harris's delivery last year?
I'm not going to set all the blame on Kamala Harris. She entered into the race and had 107 days to win. And I mean, she improved the numbers that she came in with, to be frank. So I can't blame her for losing. It's not all on her. There is a problem with the perception of the party. People perceive us as distracted and not focused on the issues that they care about the most. And there is a divide, genuinely, between focus among some members of the party. Some people outside of the party, voters, Republicans, of course, think that the party is focused exclusively on social issues, divisive social issues that people outside of the metropolitan bubble don't care about. That's the criticism that they levy at us all the time. And I think that the way we combat that is by telling people who we are and focusing on the economic side of things. Because we do, like you said, have popular policies that appeal to people. I mean, we should be focusing on raising the minimum wage, improving labor rights, expanding access to healthcare so then people can go and get a job, because if they're not healthy, they're not going to be able to work. And we have popular things that we can do, but people have to trust us first. We have to build trust with people so then they believe that we can govern effectively. And I mean, it starts with trust, and then we got to build from there.
Why do you think there is still so much public trust on the Republicans at the moment, even with the shutdown and the big beautiful bill and all of this, which could be seen as objectively unpopular or bad measures that will negatively impact the country, even yesterday with the 100% tariff on electronics from China? Why do you think there's still so much campfiring around the Republican Party at the moment?
Well, I wouldn't say that the American public trusts the Republican Party. Let me say that.
Mm.
There is a loyal base of supporters that will vote for Donald Trump specifically and the people he supports, regardless of what they do. That is just the fact of the matter. I mean, we start rebuilding trust with the people by showing them that we care. And there will be a further degradation of trust. Well, of an already minimal trust, I should say, for the Republican Party. There'll be a further degradation of that trust amongst the public because they're going to see the effects of what the Republicans are doing. And I mean, we saw in 2020 when Joe Biden won the presidency, people rejected Donald Trump because they thought he mismanaged the economy. They thought he made their lives worse. They thought that he couldn't stand up on the world stage. And people rejected Donald Trump at the ballot box in heavy numbers in 2020. And that is because we as a party provided an optimistic message about getting out of the pandemic. The old slogan seems like ages ago, building back better. I believe you had a prime minister use that. He's certainly a hoot. It's funny. Both of our
What do you
countries
hear
have
about
gone.
him? What do you hear about him across the pond? Like snippets or?
I know a couple people who know him.
Wow.
Mostly that he's just a hoot. And I mean, people say he's highly intelligent, but he can get in the way of himself from time to time.
Yeah. Yeah, over here we tend to make jokes about the kind of way he pronounces words, like the word blue. There are lots of clips of him saying words in very funny ways. But yeah, he's an interesting character, and he's been described as a populist alongside President Trump. So interesting, there's similarities there.
You could say that some of the tactics of Boris Johnson were populist, but I mean, I don't think that he fully governed as a populist. If he had fully governed as a populist, he might have maintained his coalition longer, but for Trump, though, he definitely is a populist. And I will make this point. You said that our policies as a Democratic Party are popular. They are. And for something to be popular, it doesn't necessarily have to be populist. We, as a party, can get distracted by this allure of populism. And I don't think that we should neglect when things are popular. If things are popular, campaign on them. If people want things to happen, then campaign on them. Because that's the first way you're going to build trust with people. A, showing up in their neighborhoods, and B, telling them what you stand for. I mean, you can campaign on things that are popular without neglecting the nitty-gritty things that people don't necessarily want to talk about, but things that need to get done in government regardless.
Since we are all here young people, and we're a podcast focused on young people, in the polls, there's been a split between 18 to 21-year-olds and 22 to 24-year-olds and who they vote for. Why do you think that is? Or what are young people in America really caring about when it comes to voting?
Well, there are a couple issues that come to mind. No, people my age care about the cost of college and the cost of education more broadly. A lot of people just can't find a job even after they've gone to college. So it's education costs, affordability broadly, jobs, being able to get a job, and housing. Housing is a big issue. None of those issues are going to improve under the current administration. And I mean, there are several ways that, I'll take housing, for example. There are several ways that we can improve the current housing shortage in the United States. And I mean, the first thing that you have to do is, I mean, I'll get to why, but there's one thing that you can do. There's an opportunity to deregulate certain zoning restrictions and permitting requirements so then people can build housing in the places that need it. Because often what you find in places of high population and places that have very restrictive zoning laws, there's space to build things. High density housing is an opportunity in certain large cities, open spaces in suburban areas to build either public or not public housing for people to live. So there are plenty of opportunities to loosen some of these restrictions and build the housing that we need. And I mean, that can get to be a radical proposal because there are Democrats who even when they hear the word deregulation start to scream at you. But I mean, I think that we get far too caught up in labels and certain wording. If a policy is objectively right, we should do it. If the policy would enable more people to get into housing and to be able to afford a house at an earlier age, then I think we should do it because there are people in this country, myself included, who don't see the possibility of getting a house anytime soon. And I mean, in the 60s, people were getting married at 21, 22 years old and moving into their house the next day. And I don't think that many people today could imagine doing that unless they're from a very wealthy or highly capable family. And there are opportunities that we can do, well, that we can seize and use them to govern more effectively to build the housing that we need. And we should do that.
Similarly, I'm going to use Josh's stat again, but it was 18 to 21-year-olds have 11 point lead on favouring Republican policies. Why do you think? Like, I think you clarified this a little bit, but what do you think is the main reason that people are rallying around Republicans rather than Democrats at the moment, especially in our age group?
Well, there are a multitude of reasons. One thing that the Republican Party has done rather effectively and quite in a sinister way, the Republican Party has given people an enemy because they don't have the solutions to the most pressing issues that are facing young Americans. They just want to blame someone. They want to blame immigrants. They want to blame literally everyone under the sun. And I think that when there is an easy solution on offer, people will gravitate to that, whether they're young, middle-aged, older. It's much more difficult to offer a more complex and nuanced solution to difficult questions. And I think that the Republican Party has managed to convince people that the more people they deport, the cheaper things will become. That isn't true. That is not true at all. I mean, if that were the case, then costs would have already dropped in this administration. But the costs on everyday products have gone up in the last several months under the Trump administration, even with their mass deportation effort. It's a ridiculous notion to think that people, I mean, these are people, an entire group of people are the problem of the nation, when I don't think that we're looking to place the blame in the right place. I don't think we should be blaming hardworking people who want to come here and work. I think that we should be looking at the people who control the Republican Party. And there are moneyed interests that run the Republican Party and always have. And they're the people who are holding our country back. They're the people who say that young people are just going to have to deal with it. And I don't think that's the right way to go. There are a lot of ways that we can reach out to young people, but we've got to challenge the Republican Party head on and say, no, immigrants aren't to blame for all of our problems. In many cases, you are. I'm not going to lay the blame solely on Republicans for the state of the country, but if we were able to move on from some of these more Reagan-era policies and restrictions of trickle-down economics, then maybe there would be more opportunity for young people across the country.
It's interesting you talk about immigration. It's all that's spoken about here in UK politics as well, and it's also what is blamed for by the Reform Party over here, that is blamed for all the issues that are going on in our country. So do you think that immigration is genuinely believed by a lot of young people in America, or even just in Georgia, to be the main fault? Or is it tending to be the older generation of voters? From what you've seen, in just people you've met?
I think that immigration is more of a concern of people who on a day-to-day basis don't interact with first-generation Americans. And those often are middle-aged people, older people. And that's not me demonizing them in any way, but we as young people interact with people who are different from us all the time. I mean, I go to Georgia Tech, and there are, I believe, our university, I think the breakdown by demographic is about 40% white, just above that, like 42, 43% Asian, around, like, I believe 8% Black as well. So, I mean, we have a very diverse university, and constantly, I mean, whether you're Black, white, anything else, young people are exposed to people who are different. And I think that's a good thing, a very good thing, to be exposed to people who offer different perspectives on the world. Young people today are disenchanted with the way politics is. So the people who are loyal to a particular party will show up at an election. And like I mentioned earlier, the Republican Party has a very loyal base. And the loyal base amongst young people in the Republican Party will show up in ways that the loyal base of the Democratic Party will show up from time to time. Because there's a problem. In the Democratic Party, we have a lot of people who would very much like to win. In the Republican Party, they have a lot of people who will win at all costs. And we've got to win. The only way that Democrats are going to be able to govern and do it effectively is if we win. And we've got to win first. And that we can offer a an optimistic message about economic security that includes more and more people in the country. And I don't think that we have to do that by demonizing a whole group of people.
Mm.
We can do it by bringing people into the tent, expanding the tent, and offering solutions that people can gravitate toward.
I think looking onto the future here, I think at the moment we've already got this in terms of Texas and other places where gerrymandering is becoming a significant worry for many people, as in the Republicans using state lines as a means to try and get more votes. And I'm just curious on how you feel about the future of both midterm elections and future elections, where the Republicans, like you said, that they want to almost win at any cost. And so how do you think the Democrats will even kind of push against this, even if you've got favorite policies, if they're using state maps as a means to get more seats or get more votes in midterms? How do you even navigate that? How do you even fix this issue?
Well, the lines of electoral politics are constantly being redrawn, whether districts be gerrymandered, or if, like you saw at the last election, demographic shifts are becoming less favorable to the Democratic Party. I mean, you can start with this whole recent Texas gerrymandering thing. There are people across the country who, when they hear about gerrymandering, automatically oppose it. And I think on principle, we should oppose gerrymandering. I think redrawing maps in favor of a particular political party is wrong. But I will say we live in exceptional times. And I know that Gavin Newsom in California is trying to justify redrawing the maps there to counteract the redraw in Texas. And he's doing it because he's claiming these are extraordinary times. We have extraordinary measures to counteract some of these undemocratic, anti-constitutional efforts that the Republicans are advancing. It is a really difficult question to answer, but the way we win is by not relying on cities simply because there are more people there.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, there are more voters in cities. There are more people in cities that vote for Democrats, but that doesn't mean that we should neglect the suburbs, and that certainly doesn't mean that we should neglect the rural areas, because there are people across the country who want to hear from us, or at the very least want an alternative to the way things are going now.
Yeah.
And I think that we can provide that alternative. We just have to get beyond some of our more natural inclinations to stick within comfortable party confines and expand out to people who otherwise would disagree. And there's an example that Andy Beshear often uses in Kentucky. He's a Democrat representing Kentucky. He's their governor, and Kentucky is a very conservative state. Mitch McConnell is one of their senators, and Kentucky is by no means a shining beacon of liberalism, by no means. But Andy Beshear has managed to win in Kentucky by just telling people what he believes in, and also governing effectively, because people trust him and they know him on a first-name basis because he's honest with people. They might not necessarily agree with him on everything, but they at least know what he would do in certain situations. And that builds a certain level and certain degree of trust that we have to build across the country.
Do you not think that purely using this authenticity in order to get votes might almost be counterintuitive against like their people's parties that they believe in? Like, is authenticity enough to get the votes?
I certainly don't think that authenticity on its own will win elections, but authenticity does go a long way in, like I said, building trust with people, showing that you're a normal human being. Authenticity can also go a long way in proving to people that you're not trying to do outlandish things, you're not crazy. And we can use, and we should, alter the way we speak about certain issues, because we can do good things for good people without using academic vocabulary. We don't have to constantly use words that people otherwise would never use in their day-to-day lives, which has and will distance us from people. We just have to act like the normal people that we are and be as true to ourselves as possible in elections and when we govern.
I think authenticity is probably the best way to
Yeah.
end it. I think most people should listen to that and think, maybe just being like a normal person may just be enough to win you a couple more votes. But Matthew Rakestraw, thank you very much for being with us today. I know it's very early for you there, so maybe go get a bit more rest.
Yeah, have a coffee.
I have when I interned in DC last fall, I think it was. Yeah, it was last fall. Jesus, I got used to drinking coffee because everyone in DC communicates through getting coffee with people, and I mean it's quite annoying and definitely a thing that you have to get used to. But I never drank coffee before I went to DC, and then leaving DC, all I drank when I got coffee with people was a cappuccino every single time. Anyway,
Well, I suggest you go have several. Since it's so early for you, you've got such a no. Anyway,
No,
it's been a
it's
pleasure,
perfect.
and thank you for joining us.
thank you for having me.